With the right sets of tools, engineers can greatly enhance process robustness, deliver quality products, and reduce the overall cost of manufacturing.
In order to adopt these new technologies, the biggest element that we have to overcome is workforce readiness.
You can never know your data well enough. Really understanding where these data come from, how they were collected, what the extent of collection was.
Using this data to improve my care and care of other patients like me, I don't think you'll find a single sick person who wouldn't stand up and say, yes, I want my data used for that.
The term big data is now everywhere in the pharmaceutical industry. Whether data are generated from high-throughput screening, process monitoring, continuous manufacturing, or from patients, the industry needs effective methods to collect and use these vast quantities of data. How does the pharmaceutical industry go from being data-rich and information-poor to maximizing the value of this data? How do we turn the data into insight and ultimately improve health outcomes? In this documentary, American Pharmaceutical Review speaks to regulators, pharmaceutical manufacturers, consultants, and technology providers to learn how the industry can leverage big data to improve products and ultimately patients' lives. Pharmaceutical companies collect, analyze, and leverage data in many different ways depending on their needs. As the market creates new issues, the industry adapts to these trends to make data work for them.
The world we're translating to today has AI, mobile, sensors, and this revolution is being driven by the cloud. Now the cloud is old, so the question is, why is it driving this? Well, the cloud makes it possible to collect data at an unprecedented scale and then analyze it using machine learning and AI techniques. It also provides a central repository to collect data. I think the pharma industry is going to be revolutionized by this explosion in data.
So in terms of trends for pharmaceutical companies, how they're collecting and analyzing data, we really see three emerging trends. First is on the digital side, with advances in sensors, edge computing, data lakes. All these things are focusing on real-time data capture, storage, and retrieval. These are fine-tuned to manage the variety, volume, and velocity of data in real time. Second is on the science and processing side. Existing players across the value chain are really focusing on real-time management and analysis of process data. This takes them a step closer to continuous process verification, the implementation of PAT, and moving towards continuous processing and ultimately real-time release. Finally, we're seeing an ecosystem of regulators, companies, and emerging unexpected players that are collaborating on the standardization of data definitions, structures, and protocols.
For what I have seen in the last 10 years, we have been moving away from the mentality that we didn't want to know what was happening too much to our processes. We didn't want to look more than what it was required. I think that right now we have come to realize that if we look at the information that we're collecting already and we gather knowledge from it and we put that information in context, we can make better choices with regards to continuous improvement, and also we can improve our capability of deliver to the patient. We have been learning a lot as an industry from other industries that are more advanced, such as e-commerce and semiconductors. We want to get there as well. I think that that's the biggest trend that I have seen.
If you look at the last 5 years trend and you analyze the FDA warning letter with data integrity breaches, it is clear that the industry is under the authorities' magnifier. However, in 2018, I noticed a slight reduction of this number of warning letters citing data integrity, which is a clear symptom, in my opinion, that the industry is taking action, is trying to improve their process in order to manage critical data in a better way.
The trend we're seeing is the industry moving towards storing all GMP data in a single location. Our customers are no longer just using the data for batch release, but also to look at long-term trends. Facility monitoring systems, such as the Facility Pro, monitor data, alarm thresholds, and provide visual, audio, printed, and electronic data reported in a variety of formats. This data can be used for batch release, audit trails, and alarm and acknowledgement and verification of following proper SOPs.
There's more companies that are starting to curate and collect healthcare data for use by pharmaceutical industries, so there's a lot more interest in potentially expanding the use, looking at safety, for hypothesis generation, for improving the efficiencies of clinical trials. But when you get bigger data sources, the potential to use these grows. I think we're still sort of learning all the uses for big data.
Pharmaceutical companies have a broad interest in how they can use data. I think it's important, though, that while they may be the ones leveraging the data, they're not necessarily the ones collecting the data. They're working with outside groups, with payer groups, with insurance companies, with other kinds of third-party groups that aggregate data that come from the healthcare system. So I think we're seeing lots of different parties, lots of different stakeholders, ideally coming together to make this work. Our Sentinel system is a collaborative effort between FDA, the Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare Research Institute in Boston, and several data partners that contribute data that totals over 200 million covered lives, almost 500 million person years of observation. And we're constantly improving how we can use these data, where it's an iterative process, it's a constantly growing and expanding system.
There's a lot of talk in the industry about big data and how the industry needs effective methods to collect and use these vast quantities of data to improve outcomes.
There are a lot of ways that we're seeing companies utilize big data to improve outcomes in a multitude of areas. Currently, the focus for big data has been really on externally focused operations such as sales or marketing, even supply chain, aimed at finding patterns in unstructured data, dealing with human behavior, or even sales figures. However, there are case studies that show the use of data to predict process outcomes, characterize processes, and improve even uptime of facilities using predictive maintenance. These are some of the first steps that companies have already taken towards reducing manual operations, connecting different process steps, and even handling the data diversity that they experience. Once the industry really overcomes these initial steps and challenges, they can really start to leverage big data with all its potential and improvement that it can bring.
We are collecting a lot of information already from our assets, our processes, and quality. A lot of that information is not mined, or that information is not placed in context. So just by even comparing our current operations to previous operations, we can determine what's our manufacturing stability, and we can also determine if we are going to be able to deliver the right quality in the future, because we will be able to detect drifts in the production and also in the assets, in the health of the assets.
GlaxoSmithKline, a major company, one of the most respected, most conservative pharma companies, made an investment in 23andMe, a multi-triple-digit million-dollar investment, in order to get access to their database of several million individuals, have genetic tests done, and use that to help improve drug discovery and targeted discovery. So in the R&D space, you're already starting to see this happening. We're doing several projects in compliance with firms where we are trying to mine their social communications to evidence problems. And then the area of consumerism, med device companies have come to us and talking about building global platforms, which we are in discussion with, where they would collect data directly from their patients' devices.
So what are the advantages of centralized data collection and management system? Recipes and sampling plans can be downloaded to the system, making sample collection and data management very simple and paperless. The Pharma Integrity System is fully compliant to 21 CFR Part 11, so you have a robust, reliable database where the data is collected, can be trended, and allows for data analysis and root cause analysis when something is out of trend or out of specification.
Anytime you use this data for safety, you're improving outcomes because you're informing which drug for which patient at the right time, what monitoring do you need. We've had an example in the Center for Biologics where they looked at a vaccine, so the vaccine was studied in a very traditional way in 2 clinical trials, almost 50,000 patients, so not little data. But the question was, how long is the effectiveness of the vaccine? Does it last? And so they were able to use data from a healthcare system, and now they looked at 350,000 patients who got the vaccine. So you can sort of start to leverage into greater numbers to find out, yes, it is effective, and put that in sort of labeling.
We know a lot about the pharmacology of a lot of these medicines, but the harms of a medicine are related not only to their intrinsic pharmacologic properties, but also how they're used in a complex healthcare system. And using data administered from claims, electronic health records, other sources, we can understand how these medicines are actually being used. We've also done a lot of studies of safety issues with our Sentinel system. We've used it to study a variety of different health outcomes, and we've used it in a way that it's part of our post-market drug safety program at this point.
Applying the benefits of big data in a pharmaceutical environment can be a daunting task, but there is always low-hanging fruit or certain functions or processes that can benefit the most and can quickly achieve the goals of leveraging big data.
I think that one of the big challenges that companies will have with regards to adopting more advanced data analytics techniques, it will be with regards to the data infrastructure. In order for us to be able to adopt and utilize data analytics in a proper way that it's more effective and efficient, our data systems will have to be integrated. And that's easier to be done from scratch. Like if you're a new company, you can certainly try to find a way and a strategy to build your automation structure in such a way that those connections are done from the beginning. But unfortunately, many older companies have very fragmented IT infrastructures, which make it very expensive and difficult for them to change and start leveraging data in the way that newer companies can. It's going to be easier for newer companies and for newer facilities to be able to integrate vertically the entire automation and data architecture, whereas for older facilities, they will have to be doing these changes in different horizons where they don't incur in such a high cost since the beginning.
You know, some people have said, well, look, there's all these industries, like the airline industry, they collect all this data on every flight. And so why doesn't the healthcare system do the same thing? And if you think about the amount of gasoline and the flight time, all this data is probably generated in the same units over time, and even probably computer generated. And so it's very easy to extract and analyze. When you look at a healthcare encounter, there's a lot of variability about what may be focused on. There's a lot of variability in the documentation.
If you go in, for example, maybe to a particular health system's electronic health record system, you may get those data. You may have those linkages there for you, but it's not generalizable or projectable to the entire United States. So we've seen this in many cases. There's this trade-off between granularity, which we tend to see in smaller systems, and nationally representative data, which tends not to have that. So both are necessary for us, and we use both of them.
So when you submit data, for example, if they wanted to submit it to us, we have certain regulatory frameworks that say we have to know where that data came from. Is it reliable? Is it authentic? How do you document that when you yourself did not generate that data? And we have a number of guidances for industry on how to use electronic source data for our regulatory purposes. And so I think it's both getting at the unstructured data and then also understanding the data, making sure that it's accurate, it's complete, and it really can answer the question.
Regulatory compliance is and should always be the main focus of pharmaceutical companies. As the use of big data grows to improve outcomes, pharma companies must make sure they are compliant with all current regulations regarding data and also look forward to any updates or changing regulations regarding data.
So if there's something I hear frequently, and this isn't true of pharma as well, it's also true of healthcare, it's true of the financial services. When we talk to them, they're like, but the regs don't allow me to do it. And so the tendency is to say, well, I need to keep everything in my own purview, inside my own data center. That way I'll be safe. And the other thing is, well, I don't want to have a breach happen. So there's a lot of concern and fear about this. Compliance and regulatory standards are a good thing. I think the reverse needs to happen. Things like GDPR and HIPAA need to be embraced. Why? Because they tell you how to do it safely. You need to, for instance, start off by saying, what is my cloud strategy, right? Bring in cyber experts to help you with compliance, regulatory, bring in security experts. Make sure the data you build is compliant, right? And all the major cloud manufacturers, whether it be, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, as well as IBM and Oracle, have the ability to give you HIPAA-compliant components and services. What you need then is somebody to come in and put them together in a way that meets your business goals, allows you to do what you need to do, create a platform, as it were, a digital platform that allows you to do all the things we've talked about and do it safely in a way that's compliant. All the three major vendors I mentioned who provide public clouds are investing billions of dollars every month to keep the cloud safe. So it's very important to not try and do it yourself, but to actually partner with one of them with the right SI or advisor that will help you navigate all the complexities, the alphabet soup of the regulations. And this allows you to leverage the investments that are being made in the cloud, in big data, to make it happen.
We work with our customers to provide the full monitoring solution from start to finish. Our advisory team can conduct the risk assessment, determining when, where, and what to sample. Our project delivery team then takes over to handle the installation, commissioning, validation, and training. Finally, our global service centers will perform the routine calibrations, preventative maintenance, and repairs, all using the same standards and procedures to ensure accurate, consistent monitoring.
A lot of personal healthcare data is privacy. How is that being attended to? The more, as Gerald said, the Sentinel system is very nice in that it's distributed, so we never really, all that sort of identifiable data about a patient is behind the firewalls where it usually resides. So when you start linking things like genomics, there is a lot of concerns about could you re-identify patients even though we think they're de-identified. So sort of paying attention to that, and that also may occur as you move and take data not only in the United States but maybe combine it from data outside the United States. What are the privacy laws in different places as you start to work in different data?
I think from our point of view, as scientists in a regulatory agency, we want to understand the data as carefully as possible. A very detailed explanation of what the data are, where they came from, exactly how it was managed, transformed, and how it was analyzed in a lot of detail to make sure that the inferences that the analysts are making are the correct ones. So there's a lot of regulatory issues, but then those spill over into the scientific issues as well, as really one big continuum of regulatory science.
In traditional non-regulated environments, big data tools are used by putting large amounts of data into a data lake with the hope of finding useful patterns. However, we need to validate the insights gained from big data in the biotech environment, especially if they're going to be used to take corrective or preventative actions or improvements from the insights gained. This has to be justified within the current regulatory framework. At the end of the day, ensuring regulatory compliance is key to the sustainability and long-term value. And for the industry as a whole, we'll have to come together and define the assumptions and models that will help derive these insights, which is really at the heart of big data technologies.
As the pharmaceutical industry becomes more global, companies need to roll out data collection and analysis initiatives on a worldwide scale. This can present many challenges as facilities can be at various levels of automation and can be subject to different compliance regulations.
This is really a global environment. So, global manufacturing companies are really getting more connected among their various sites. And they're actively working towards leveraging the insights they can gain from their facilities around the globe that can help improve their operations. Big data technologies can play a really important role in achieving this goal. Leveraging data becomes more cost-effective as today's tools can deal with larger volumes of data and still provide that local context when required. We're seeing facilities in Europe and the United States, and especially larger pharma companies, definitely ahead on the path to the paperless facility due to their significant access to the data and technologies that can help them do this.
So it is really difficult to discriminate by countries, but it's true that US and the EMEA region are definitely the driver for this important change in the pharmaceutical industry. Also, I noticed that most of the multinational companies having headquarters, for example, in US or in Europe, are requesting the needs of data to be able to be shared in a segregated and 21 CFR Part 11 manner across multiple sites around the world, for example, from Asia through Europe or through US and so on. So the industry is looking at modern systems that can allow this kind of interaction, transferring of data in a secure manner.
Global data are important. We look at data from global clinical trials, and I think we'll be looking more and more at data from global observational studies as well. It's really important to understand the healthcare system in which those data are generated, what patterns of care are, what standards of care might be. Some countries may be using one approach to treat something, others may be using an equally valid but different approach. And as you aggregate these data, it's really important to understand where some of the differences may arise and how they may impact your result.
I mean, certainly the European systems, some of them are very contained. There's no what we might call leakiness. You know, in the United States, you have your insurer, you may get your insurance through the ACA or your employer, but you may change insurance every 2 or 3 years. And as you change insurance, depending on how we're collecting your data, if we're collecting for claims or even if you change your doctor, we can lose you in the system. Some of these European systems are really holistic and they have data on the patient, you know, complete data and over time. So there may be some advantages in certain data sets that you can get there depending upon how the healthcare system is structured.
As the need to use data to ensure better outcomes becomes more apparent, the industry is seeing many players such as technology providers, pharma companies, and regulators all pushing this technology forward.
The vendors are going to be facilitating putting this technology in front of the industry and making it visible. And they also can bring an element of cross-pollination across the industry. Unfortunately, vendors don't have visibility to our organization, and there's going to be a huge element of organization and strategy involved in the adoption of these newer technologies and changing the ways that we have traditionally worked in the past. So in order to make this change more effective and also to make it more sustainable, we will need a lot of support from the leadership of the biopharma companies. The biggest element in moving this technology forward in our industry is going to be ensuring that our workforce is properly developed in order to adopt it and sustain it. There's not going to be change in the industry just by technology alone. We also have to rely and prepare our workforce to be able to adopt and utilize these new technologies.
So honestly, I don't see a single and a clear driver, but a general and conscious understanding of the right path forward to achieve this goal. I see authorities that are enforcing existing rules, and I see vendors that must listen what the rules are in order to develop systems that are able to accomplish the requirement, but moreover, create solutions that are user-friendly, easy to use, modern enough to facilitate the work, the process of the pharma and biopharma industry. Pharma and biopharma will take the biggest advantage from this game because they will be the one benefit of modernized system that will really help improving their process and facilitate the efficiency of their production line on a day-to-day basis.
So we're seeing this push around data coming from a multitude of areas. First, the FDA is clearly encouraging big data and analytics. Producers are seeking value through cost reduction and improved control. And clearly vendors of collection and analytics platforms are also driving this forward. But then there are also industry consortia such as BPOG that are driving work streams to support this trend. Furthermore, I would say that equipment vendors are uniquely positioned as they're actually closest to the equipment that's being leveraged and utilized in these manufacturing processes. They can leverage the data acquisition and management in their offerings to support advancements in process technologies. I would say today that all vendors are very clear and understand the prominent role that data and information can play in providing a competitive advantage.
One of the groups that's helped pushing this forward are the technology vendors, specifically the cloud vendors, who recognize that they need to help the entire healthcare industry make this leap to using data, and they've been spending a lot of time and effort in doing that. The second thing driving this really is the consumer, right? Kids certainly will want to go check everything on the internet, whatever, etc., instantly. So they're going to want to know not just, is this the right drug for me, but is this the right drug for me for my genetic condition, for my specific variant of disease? Have I looked at the side effects? What about the impact on my life, etc.? This is the demand that the consumer is putting on pharma. Let's not just prescribe a drug, let's prescribe an app with it that allows you, that monitors your use of it and makes it much more effective. So I think you're going to start to see that happening more and more.
FDA developed their own FDA My Studies app as a way, to be used in clinical trials, that you could get data from the patients or patient-reported outcomes. And we pilot tested that app. And now we've made the app free. The code is free on GitHub. It can be adapted. And we're working with some other studies to use the app, both in a clinical trial, in which it might be used to capture an outcome, and also in another registry to patients with inflammatory bowel disease to get the patient-reported outcome through their app.
The whole stakeholder group is interested in this, and I think patients are interested in this because it's a way for their story to be told in a much more representative way. What I would say, though, is it's important as these systems are developed that all the different expertise be involved in building the system. So somebody can have a lot of data and a very high-speed computer and perhaps a statistical technique, but if they don't really understand the data, if they don't understand what the strengths of the data are, what the limitations of the data are, they can come up with a very erroneous conclusion. So it's important to have the clinical, medical expertise, the data science expertise, and the statistical expertise to put all this together so that when we ask relevant questions, we get relevant answers.
Taking into consideration the challenges and promise that leveraging big data for the pharmaceutical industry holds, the future certainly seems to indicate a time of improved outcomes.
So particle measuring systems not only provide software and hardware solutions, so for sampling, for analysis and automation, but we have a unique synergy of expertise. My recommendation would be to not choose a vendor, but rather engage a partner like Particle Measuring Systems that can provide total solutions to your EM challenges.
Here at Particle Measuring System, we are proud to say that we do not only offer software system, hardware peripherals, but we offer solutions that combine together our expertise in designing and developing software and hardware solutions, but also our knowledge of the pharmaceutical industry. So we can help our customer from the initial stage of the evaluation of the best system for their needs till the commissioning, and after that, the day-to-day support to ensure that the system they will eventually buy will be running and accomplishing their task every single day. My recommendation for anyone who is attempting this important challenge is to not look at the vendor, but look at the partner, engage with a partner that can support them from the first days to the implementation of the system and to a continuous support phase over here.
There's a lot of new things on the horizon that are coming in. There's new sources of data. We're seeing people explore new uses of those data, so I think we're going to be learning together. We certainly have committed under our PDUFA negotiations, and also Congress has asked us to specifically provide guidance on how to use real-world evidence to support a regulatory decision about a drug that's on a market. But that's a process because it is such a new area and that we're learning all the opportunities. We're reaching out to stakeholders, and we're also trying to answer some of the questions in terms of how these data, by doing our own demonstration projects and funding largely academics to look at different ways to get evidence from these data. We're doing all of that. It's sort of a holistic program that we will use to provide the industry further guidance so that they can move forward in this area.
And then we can provide guidance to individual companies about the individual questions they're trying to answer. So typically a company will send us a protocol, our scientific staff will review it, we'll send comments to the company, or perhaps even have a telecon or even a face-to-face meeting with them to go over the details of the protocol and to ideally arrive at a final protocol that will be robust and will give a valid answer to the question that they've asked.
There's this early dialogue that allows us all to learn, and then we can of course share that information across internally, so we're really developing expertise together with pharma as they're doing this exploration.
This is a learning process for everybody. Yeah.
People who worry about privacy and say, well, we can't do this, it's absolutely doable. And I think patients want to make it happen. And it's being driven or pulled by a lot of different groups, whether it be regulators, whether it be the pharma companies responding to business, obviously the technology vendors. But eventually it's the consumer or the patient demanding this, and that is why this change with the use of data is inevitable. If Google can use my data to tell me which restaurant to go to, or Amazon can look at my purchases to tell me what screwdriver should buy, we sure as heck should be using that data to make life and death decisions about my cancer treatment or my diabetes or managing some other health condition I have. Carefully complying with all the regulations, using technology to get to a place where I can truly individualize my health based on all the information about me and get the best care, highest quality at the lowest cost, and the best quality of life. That's the world we're moving towards.